So of course I joined the talent agency Mythic. Big thanks to TecTone for helping me out. He actually got me in contact, and
So there has recently been pretty massive allegations on the internet following two very large creators by the name of TecTone and Pinkchyu, to the point where Pinkchyu was able to get a protective order on TecTone for 10 years, which will not allow him to own firearms. Now, throughout most of the coverage on these streamers, on these creators, I have been here, as well as a few others, like Mythic and Legal Mindset, who is a law YouTuber with 379,000 subscribers. Now, we all know that Mythic is in his own allegations, is in his own hot water involving lawsuits with other creators and whatnot, and a lot of people like to call that out and point out the fact that he's biased because of the way he's covering the TecTone allegations. But then we have this creator by the name of Legal Mindset, who is a lawyer who tries to pretend as though he's covering this situation from a lawyer's point of view, when that could not be further from the truth.
of course I do know TecTone. He's an individual I'm familiar with, so you could say I have a bias towards TecTone. But that being said, I'm going to try to do this as neutrally as possible and present both sides of the argument. Because remember, there are always two sides of the argument, and particularly in this post-Depp Me Too era, we have to consider all of the factors before we just go out and cancel someone.
Now, one of the biggest ways to show this very clear bias is the fact that TecTone helped Legal Mindset get into his talent agency, Mythic. Now, this is coming from Shamu YouTube. Legal Mindset secured a contract with Mythic Talent using TecTone. Legal Mindset is now running cover for Tone after a protection order has been issued with the judge stating they believe Pink was SA'd.
So of course I joined the talent agency Mythic, and this was put out on September 27th, so it's 3 days ago, which was really awesome. Big thanks to TecTone for helping me out. He actually got me in contact and let me get in contact with the leadership, the CEO, the COO. It was really awesome to meet them and to talk about them.
Now, I think it's very important to point out the fact that this guy and TecTone have a connection of some sort where he's able to get him into the same talent agency as him, and that's very important to point out when covering some very serious allegations. Mind you, when Legal Mindset was covering the Mythic and Emeru allegations, he gave him no sort of credibility or no sort of cadence or respect in the same way that he's giving TecTone, as it almost seems as though he's trying to sweep all of these serious allegations.
As a non-legal observer, taking off my handsome lawyer hat for a second, I do not find Mythic to be very credible. His story is not looking good. I cannot say with certainty, absent proof in court or other hard evidence, who is guilty, who is not guilty, etc. But all of the factors right now favor Emeru. Emmy looks much more credible. Her presentation was much more credible. She seemed genuinely distraught versus Mythic, who really only seemed distraught at the fact that this is going to ruin his career.
Now, Legal Mindset also said this.
And what I will say to you guys is this: there's a lot of buyer's remorse in dating. When you date somebody, you can look back at the stuff you did and say, oh, I have buyer's remorse, right? And that sucks. And it sucks that in American law, some girl or man or whatever, your partner with buyer's remorse can come back and hit you with lawsuits, with penalties, with restraining orders a year after you dated because they have buyer's remorse now on dating you or maybe on sexual stuff they did with you, right? That sucks. That sucks. Because if they did that stuff consensually with you, like, why is that should be dragged through the court of public opinion? You know, I don't see that.
Which makes it come across as him accusing Pinkchyu of being some disgruntled ex who is now trying to come out with some allegations in an attempt to ruin his life. Again, not presenting this same type of opinion or idea when it came to the Emeru and Mythic situation. Even going as far as putting out these little slideshows where he basically lays down the law on these situations. Now, here is what he had to say when it came to Pinkchyu and TecTone situation. Travis County has pro-female bias. Potential activist judge. Jury pool potentially biased towards plaintiff. Skews heavy female biased. We haven't seen abusive communications. Yet when he covers the Emeru situation, it's almost an entirely different ballgame. And he makes comments like this.
So obviously you have Emmy here and she's very much at the center of this. Over the past couple weeks, since my last stream, nothing has changed the public support for her, the evidence in her side. Everything looks like it is stacking up in her favor so far. Meanwhile, Mythic over here, who promised to release information, has not done that, and it has indeed seemed to be more dedicated to his delusional self-grandeur, where he does believe he can come out on top despite a horrible lawsuit, despite facts that are against him, and this somehow not totally destroying his reputation and career.
So there we have Legal Mindset basically saying that Mythic is going to go the defamation route of trying to sue someone he believes is defaming his character is a messy look, while at the same time seeming to argue that Pinkchyu is only winning this case because the judges are biased and they favor women. There is a humongous difference, and there is obviously a humongous difference in the way that this lawyer is choosing to cover this information. Not only has Legal Mindset done things like this, he has also chosen to essentially dox Pinkchyu, who has made it very clear that she does not want her public information to be out there, including her name, which when Legal Mindset has covered the documents, the transcripts of the court filings, chose not to cover her name, which Mythic did. You can say all you want about Mythic, at least he respects the victims in these situations. While you have Legal Mindset, on the other hand, who is very clearly biased in this case. Now here's just another example of the very clear bias that Legal Mindset has towards Imuru and Mythic versus TecTone, for example. Imuru's perfect legal nuke for Mythic, so obviously he's on Imuru's side. Imuru drops legal nuke on Mythic, another one on Imuru's side. Imuru's best legal counter to Mythic. Mythic's lawsuit is hilariously bad. Again, very clearly, this guy is not a fan of Mythic, right? There's probably a lot of you out there who are not as well, but it's very clear that there is a bias against Mythic in support of Imuru. Now, here's an example of his videos on TecTone. The first one is TecTone must be canceled, and this is almost him making fun of like an internet cancellation of TecTone over some video game drama. And then he started getting into some of the more serious stuff about 2 days ago when he started to cover the TecTone files. Again, these are lives, until he dropped this video, TecTone Under Fire, Fast Facts. And that's where I showed you guys the clip of him very clearly making it known that he was going to try to present this information from both sides, when that's clearly not the case, as again, he is biased and he was recruited by TecTone to be in his Mythic talent agency. Now, this is Legal Mindset's judgment on the TecTone case. Withheld for the moment, pending the release of further documentation and evidence. In a post-Johnny Depp world, we need to account for all the evidence, taken as a whole, before concluding someone is ripe for cancellation. Cancellation, and he's talking about SA and stalking. Interesting. Mythic releasing documents clearly takes pressure off of his case, which contains evidence of abusive communications. Abusive communications versus abusive physical actions, including forcing someone to go down on you. Intimate partner relations are very personal and private, kind of like the ones between Mythic and Imuru that you have no problem airing out. You have no problem trashing Mythic and basically supporting Imuru through all of it. Again, I'm not defending Mythic in anything. I'm not saying he's completely innocent. You are biased. You are not a reliable source to be sharing this information, at least from a lawyer's point of view. He has 379,000 subscribers. He's getting 2,000 likes to 70 dislikes. He very clearly has built an audience of people who are going to try to misrepresent this situation and try to defend TecTone over horrific claims. Again, SA, stalking, to the point that lawyers found it necessary to approve of a personal order for an entire decade. Now, in this same video, he ends up finding messages back in 2023 where Pinkchyu was talking about something she has called PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, that's being treated, causing her a lot of physical pain, and her emotions are being really bad. TecTone replied to that saying, "I will never understand how much this must hurt you, but I'm proud that you're fighting through it." As if that's some sort of proof that TecTone did not SA this woman, that TecTone did not stalk this woman, that TecTone did not film revenge porn or film this chick doing stuff on him so that he could possibly hold it over her in the future. This is horrible evidence. This is a horrible way of trying to say, how could TecTone be an evil guy when here's this tweet of him being nice to her 3 years ago? Can you believe that? I think it's also really interesting that about a minute of this new video where he defends TecTone, he spends it basically talking about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial for absolutely no reason. Almost a sense of poisoning the well, trying to say, oh, you guys remember this case that was pretty massive and Amber Heard lied about everything? Well, this could also be Pinkchyu, so let's not take her side.
Now, we live in a world that's post-Depp versus Amber Heard, and this is actually, despite what people say, it wasn't Disney, it wasn't Doki, it wasn't anything else that really blew me up. It was Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp and covering this case. And in this case, LawTube really blew up because we started covering this neutrally, whereas the whole world in that Me Too era was pro-Amber Heard, was pro saying, believe all women, believe what she says. And it turns out that Johnny Depp was indeed wronged here and he was vindicated in court. And so when I analyze the TecTone case, I look at this as we are in a post-Depp world. We need to live in a world where we don't believe my dog stepped on a bee and we don't believe any tall tale that came out of what Amber Heard's mouth or anybody else says, because we've seen cases out there in the US that I've covered on this channel, like Trevor Bauer, like the Khan case at Princeton, where we have people that are absolutely destroyed. Their careers are just absolutely wrecked based on pure allegation. So let's get into what happened. So all the
which again, like, I understand his point, right? People should have looked at the Amber Heard situation more neutrally to not obviously side with Amber Heard and attempt to ruin Johnny Depp's life. But this is again very clearly only biased to support TecTone because he did not have any of the same arguments when it came to, once again, the Mizkif and Imru situation. Yes, Imru did end up dropping a lot of text logs and things that made Mizkif look pretty bad, but she also made some allegations that were not proven. Mizkif ended up going on stream, giving his side of the story, and we're still waiting on more of that. But the fact that this guy did not give Mizkif the same type of credibility or credence says a lot about the situation, and this specific example of trying to use the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp thing in a way to defend a dude charged with SA and stalking. Now, I think this is where I'm going to wrap up the video, guys. Again, be extremely careful with the content you are consuming and the information you're taking it in, right? If anything, I suggest watching and listening to multiple commentary channels and people who are giving their thoughts and ideas and trying to understand things that they're reading and looking into, and not just blindly listening to someone because their name is like Legal Mindset or they claim that they're a lawyer and whatnot. Actually listen and understand and comprehend, and if anything, look into the biases of the people that are covering this information. Like, I've done videos on Mizkif, I've done videos on TecTone, I've done videos on just about every sort of allegation on this platform or on Twitter, Twitch, whatever the case may be, regardless of what side they are or who they are and how I know them if I do. And I feel like that is what people should be doing, and they should be covering these allegations the same way they would for this person, same way they would for that person. And personally, I just want to know what you guys think. As always, let me know down below what you think about Legal Mindset's coverage of these allegations of the TecTone situation, because personally, I just don't think he is a really reliable narrator, and he is spreading a lot of nonsense to a lot of people. The end.